not coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome back to another special episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast. And it is special this week because we're going to be talking about something that is related to the show, but a little bit different. Before we get into that, let us introduce ourselves. I'm Laura.
And I'm Kate. Yeah, so when I was in Buffalo in April, visiting you, we were standing in line at Target, or Target, as April likes to call it, when we spotted a Tortured Poets Department display. And Laura said to me, sometime we should do a Taylor Swift episode. And at first I was like, yeah, but then I was like, I don't know. I know that there's a lot of Taylor Swift content out there right now. And there are Gilmore Girls Taylor edits everywhere. And several Gilmore Insta accounts we follow are already on the TTPD meme game. And I don't want to just jump on the bandwagon and feel like I'm copying what everyone else is doing, unless it's totally different or adds something to the conversation. And with everyone talking Taylor right now, I didn't want to just make the same content everyone else is making. When something is oversaturated, it can become alienating to people, and I didn't want to do it just to do it. But I kept listening to my Taylor Certified Bops playlist and making connections like ping, 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 and characters and plots and all of these things started coming to mind. And this episode idea just sort of like formed. So I was like, all right, let's do this. I haven't seen anyone do it yet. I thought it would be fun. So, it seems like everyone and their dad is making Tortured Poets reaction videos, many to great success. The algorithm loves it. And Taylor is nothing if not a brilliant businesswoman, so it's hard not to recognize game and getting your bag when it comes to her. Not that we even have a bag, but you know what I mean. So if you truly hate Taylor Swift, you can always skip this one. But we're not really going to be talking about the music itself so much as doing a lyrical analysis in conjunction with the story arcs of Lorelai this week and Rory next week. The hope is that we can tell the story of the Gilmore Girls through the lens of Taylor Swift songs and make the connections for you so that you don't even really need to be familiar with the songs to follow along with us. It'll be one of those things where if you know, and if you don't, we'll explain it. So if that sounds like something you're into, we'd love you to stick around.
Yep. Before we really dive deep into this, friendly reminder that this is a spoilers all podcast. So we're going to be talking about the episode from start to finish, including the revival. If you haven't seen it, go catch up and then come back and revisit this episode. Also, fair disclaimer, you may hear cat noises during this video. If someone decides to wake up from their nap, we make no apologies for that. This is a cat-friendly podcast. Other than that, please just also remember to do all of those YouTube things for us. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, share this with your family and friends who love Gigi or are T-Swizz fans. Any and all support really helps us out, and we're always so grateful for that.
Yeah. And one last warning, there might be some swearing in this episode. There are some explicit lyrics in Taylor songs, and sometimes it just slips out of my mouth. So there's no accounting for that. So, be warned. It shouldn't be too heavy, but earmuffs if you're sensitive to the cursey words. But all right, let's start off with just a quick primer. Before we get started on the main discussion, Laura, why don't you tell me about your Taylor Swift fandom? Why was it that you suggested a Taylor Swift tie-in episode?
Yeah. I think that I had already started to see parallels, even minutely, between the episodes. And I have always been a Taylor Swift fan, certainly not to the level that a lot of other people in the world are. I am not a crazed Swiftie, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I've just always had a healthy appreciation for her music and for what she has put out. Let's flash back to 2012. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee, visiting a friend, just thinking that I was going to have a normal girls' week with that person. And we went to the Treehouse restaurant in downtown Nashville, just sat in to have lunch, some drinks. It was like middle of the day on a Tuesday, so nobody was there. Literally nobody was there. And Taylor Swift walks in. And she sits down at a table in this Treehouse bar area. We were on the second level where we are. And my friend is like, Laura, do you know who that is? And I was like, it kind of looks like Taylor Swift. And she's like, that's because it is Taylor Swift. And I was like, language. Sorry, not sorry. I was like, get the fuck out of here. You can't tell me that I've been in Nashville for all of half an hour, which was reality because I had just landed. And Taylor Swift just walks into the restaurant that we decided to have lunch in. And she's like, well, yeah, like she lives here sometimes. Like, so my friend made me go over to her. It wasn't hard to twist my arm to do it, but we went over and said hi. And she's like, this is my friend Laura. She's never been in Nashville. You know, this is her first time here. Just wanted to like come meet you and say hi. And nicest person, you know, just speaking to her character at that point in time, just very friendly, asked me how I was enjoying the city, how long I was going to be there for, what we had hoped to do. Just spent some time talking with us. You know, she obviously had like security with her and a publicist. She could have told us to like fuck off, but she didn't. It was just very nice talking to us and chatting with us, and mind blown a little bit. So there was that experience. And then in 2015, I also had an amazing opportunity to go to her 1989 tour and see her live in concert, which was the only time I have ever done so. I would love to go back again when her tickets are not $20,000. But she gave a miraculous concert as well. She is a very talented performer. So it just made sense to me, knowing that her new album had come out, hearing that other content creators were drawing these parallels or just covering it. I'm like, what can we do that's also same but different, as you alluded to? And I thought that there was fresh content there to be mined. And so here we are.
Yeah. I mean, as a girl who grew up in rural Ontario, obviously, young girl forward country music was a thing for me. I'm not a huge country fan, and Taylor's country eras are not my favorite, although there are some definite gems from those albums. But I definitely really got on my Taylor fandom around Red. So, you know, around the time you were meeting Taylor Swift, I was a Red stan singing State of Grace to myself on repeat. Yeah, I'm a State of Grace truther. I feel like it's one of those underrated songs. But anyway, like everybody loves All Too Well, and it's great. Don't get me wrong. I love that song. But State of Grace, man. Anyway, it's not the time or the place for pontificating on too many individual songs. But and then 1989 came out, and I remember loving that album. I was like, whoa, this is really good. This is very different. I'm really here for this. And then, you know, she fell off the face of the earth for a while, and I have ADHD, so I'm like, it didn't even occur to me that Taylor Swift hadn't put anything new out in a while. And so I wasn't really paying attention when Rep dropped or Lover. It's one of those things where it's just like, oh, new Taylor Swift song. Cool. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Like, what's the vibe of the single? But, you know, most of the stuff I've heard from her, I've always liked. I've just never been the sit down and listen to a whole album kind of person for pretty much anyone ever in my life. Maybe not since I was, you know, 14 and getting Avril Lavigne CDs, because, you know, you had the whole disc and it like that was kind of how you listened to it, right? But since then, since getting an iPod Shuffle, I haven't been much of an album gal. Again, ADHD, I very much like to ping around, and I know Taylor's music is much better when you kind of consume it all at once, because, you know, each album is constructed in a particular way, and I didn't really know that until fairly recently. And so basically I had slept on a lot of her music. I really wasn't paying attention when Folklore and Evermore dropped, or Midnights, or any of that. And then the Eras Tour movie comes out, and my sister's like, we should watch the Eras Tour movie. And I'm like, yeah, all right, sure. And then I was just gobsmacked at the level of production quality and how good of a performer she was, and how she did a 3.5 hour show night after night after night. And it made me really interested in her as a person. And I was like, you know, like, why are people so rabid? Why are people paying all this money? Why does she have a movie out? Like, what's the secret sauce here? And, you know, I've spent the last several months figuring that out and getting sucked into the web of obsession. I still wouldn't call myself like a rabid Swiftie, just like you said. I don't even know if I would go to the Eras Tour, because I'm not fully agoraphobic, but I definitely don't love huge crowds. And when we're talking like 60 to 100,000 person stadiums, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
A while ago, I watched a vlog from someone who went to the opening night. Was it the opening, or was it in Vegas? I can't remember, but like someone traveled to see one of the early era shows. And just like watching their experience of like, it's taking us forever to get out of here because there's like a gajillion people. I'm like, that sounds like my nightmare. Okay. We're talking 3.5 hours of probably like being up on your feet, singing along with her, trying to find good moments to take bathroom breaks and to get drink refills. And like, you're going to miss something good. So, I don't know if that would be the concert experience for me. I have the tour movie, although I do need the Tortured Poet set to be added to it, please and thank you, because I've seen some clips of that going around the internet and it looks phenomenal. I need to see the whole production up close and personal. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with my Swiftiedom. You know, I've been very hyper fixated on her lately. It's kind of like if I'm listening to music, it's probably Taylor. Mostly I'm listening to podcasts or YouTube, but these days more music and all Taylor all the time. So yeah, that's sort of our background with Taylor. And we've already been talking for 11 minutes and we haven't even started our very long topic for the day. So I'm just going to give like a wee bit of a primer of like how this, or how I envision this. So it's obviously not really possible to do a full character arc. There's not going to be a song for every moment or every episode, but there are definitely songs that stand out to me as representative of snapshots of moments in time for these characters that can lend understanding or layers to the story. So the vibe is basically a playlist of the songs that might have been on these characters' playlists at crucial moments, something they listened to on repeat while they were going through it, you know, especially as it pertains to their romantic entanglements, as that's Taylor's predominant inspiration. So we're using Taylor's lyrics to tell the story, to expose the emotions, to analyze their states of mind. And honestly, a big reason I want to do this is that I have a feeling like Amy Sherman Palladino would hate it. She is probably a Swiftie hater, and she's too pretentious in a bad way for this. And so part of me is just like, I'm going to do it anyway.
Come at us, Amy. If you have thoughts and you want to counter us. We'll be doing this again next week for part 2. This week is centered around Lorelai. Next week will be centered around Rory. So we welcome your hatred and your thoughts, and come fight us on it. And we'll have you on next week. We'd love to talk. So
yeah. And Taylor, if you're watching this, that invitation extends to you as well. So if you're watching, and we know you are, because like you're not busy. You don't have a lot going on at the moment.
Nope. And this invite may or may not also extend to the Kelsey family. Thank you and good night.
I'm a little shocked that you would allow that, given how you feel about the Chiefs.
The Chiefs are separate from the Kelsey family, and I am working really, really hard in my own personal life to differentiate the two.
Yeah. When the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, I was just like, I'm happy for Taylor. I'm happy for Taylor. So, yeah.
Yep. TGW, we are Buffalo Bills stands here. So past football season it stung a little bit. Yeah. Kelsey family, you're still welcome. We love you. Taylor, we love you. Good luck this season.
Jason was tailgating in Buffalo. Like, he seems super legit. We're happy to have him back in Buffalo to come party with us. We know where the good booze is.
Would you like to jump on a flaming table? It sounds like it's right up his alley.
We'll introduce him to Boozy Bessie.
Yes.
All right. Shall we actually start with
yes, we shall.
Substantive stuff about Lorelai? So I was sort of thinking about this, and I feel in a lot of ways like there is some overlap between Taylor and Lorelai. I mean, obviously I don't know Taylor personally, but her whole shtick is her parasocial relationship with her fans, her vulnerability, her ability to be so relatable, even though her life is not relatable. She's very able to connect with people. And so reading between the lines of her songs and her interviews and all of those kinds of things, I get the sense, and this isn't meant in like a mean way, this is like no judgment, but in a way it feels like she's kind of stunted at 16 like Lorelai. You know, you can definitely see her years of experience coming through and see her maturation, but in some songs you can see her enduring attachments to the ideas of youth and themes of young love, you know, just this obsession with staying young and living in that sort of childish phase, you know. But Daddy, I Love Him being a great example. And there's so many others, but that's just sort of like the most recent one that people have really been talking about a lot. So obviously she has quite a young fan base, so there could be a part of this that's very much a conscious effort to make sure her songs continuously appeal to the younger demographic that she started out with in the first place. But 16 is the age where she really started gaining traction and some small fame. And it's the same age that Lorelai got pregnant. And so it's obviously not a one-to-one comparison, but it's a huge shift. And it's a huge responsibility to take on at a young, inexperienced age. And both experiences are out of the ordinary for a regular teen. And so there could be various ways where the external pressures put on them have kept them in a sort of state where it's just like, I need to, revert to my childhood a little bit for whatever reason. I think for Taylor, it's a lot about her label and maybe even her family saying, stay young, stay innocent. You're going to have a wider appeal. People are not going to want their kids listening to songs about like how many guys you've had sex with kind of vibes. Right. And so there's probably a lot of just external pressure from adults to do things a certain way. And so it stuck around a long time, but it also came out as rebelliousness, much like Lorelai had. So, she was dating men who were much older, assuming relationships would always be a struggle, that pain is required to fuel art, and this is obviously just speculation based on publicly available info. But I see there people make memes too, being like Lorelai and Taylor are the same person. And so I don't think I'm super stretching here. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be compared to Lorelai Gilmore. So any thoughts on that?
No, certainly. Not as in I don't have thoughts. No, it's not a bad thing. I think there's a lot of parallels to be drawn between these two women. And it's worth noting that when Taylor Swift was starting out as a singer-songwriter, she was Lorelai's age as she was getting pregnant. Taylor Swift started out as a preteen, coming into her teenage years, getting her first record deal, releasing her first album as a teenager, getting into that country scene first off originally, before I think she started to deviate more into like, the pop that we know her for now. But she was in high school and the same age as Lorelai when she was starting to put out albums and sell out stadiums and do all of these performances and, have all of these concerts and this new life that she was experiencing. And it's obviously so much more extreme in its own way than what Lorelai was facing. But these two women were both contending with very significant life changes. Lorelai was pregnant, about to become a young teenage mother who was about to do it solo by choice, but who was about to do it solo. Taylor Swift, even with just, familial backing and support, was a high schooler who was probably on the road, homeschooling, having tutors, just, again, living this life where you're not at home all the time. You're traveling from city to city. Your life has been uprooted. You're now in the public eye. Everybody who is gonna know who you are. It's a massive life shift. And so in different but similar ways, these two women were contending with massive upheavals. And so I think it's very interesting to also see and draw comparisons between how Lorelai dealt with it, which I think was remarkably well, and how Taylor Swift has dealt with it, which I would also echo is remarkably well. These two women have become, and I say have as if Lorelai Gilmore is like a real person, but these two women became very successful young adults, matured into adulthood, and then just went on to have very healthy and respectable career paths and were successful despite, and there's a lot of parallels here too, with various men coming into their life and then exiting their life, relationships not going well, having to contend with that, and how that factors into your career, which it did for, again, both of these women. So the parallels are strong with this one, folks, and this is what we're here for. So strap in, because we have a lot to say.
Yeah, they both really had to grow up too fast. There was a lot of expectation placed on them. And, for Lorelai, it was because she had to step up to be a mom. And for Taylor, it was because she had to be in the public eye. She had to be a businesswoman. She had to deal gracefully with social situations that most people would never face. I mean, 2009, was it the MMVAs, the Kanye incident?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what 19-year-old knows how to deal with that with any level of grace? And she just sort of like stood there being like, okay, cool. Everybody's booing me. Like, you know, these things are obviously traumatic for her and have kept her sort of fixated on the past in a lot of ways. And Lorelai has a lot of that going on too. But speaking of being, oh wait, before we actually get into the songs, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Lorelai would think of Taylor Swift?
That is a great question. I think at first she would probably think like, oh, Taylor is one of those sellout wannabes just trying to conform to what the public expects of her because she's just trying to like cash in and make money. She's not a genuine artist. You know, Lorelai has always just had a very healthy appreciation for bands and for artists who bring their own to the table. She doesn't want something that's generic. She doesn't want music that's generic. She has a wider scope than that. And I can see how at first glance Taylor Swift might have been someone who's just like, she's just like all the other pop singers. She's just like all of the other stars. You know, like, okay, you know, I think as we have seen, especially once Taylor got into like her folklore era, which was just an album, I think, unlike anything that she had ever done up until that point. I think that's where Lorelai Gilmore would have taken a step back and been like, oh, wait, now, hang on. I'm hearing something different. This is a very fresh and unique take, which is unexpected. You know, you bring in like Bon Iver, for example, and I'm just, you know, which I feel like Lorelai Gilmore would worship at the feet of that man, understandably so. But I feel like that would have been the tipping point for Lorelai Gilmore to just be like, my mindset is changing. And I am actually now very much here for this artist because hot damn, what is she creating? I haven't heard anything like this. And it's a departure from what she's done. She's not catering to the masses. She's just putting out some real rawness in these songs and emoting in a way that is just like, I'm actually here for this now.
Yeah, you can't hear Exile and not fall in love with Taylor Swift. Like, seriously amazing. So, yeah, I tend to concur where it's just like, I think the attitude of a lot of people is one of underestimation of her, especially her songwriting talents. I mean, obviously she doesn't produce all of her own songs. And so, you know, when you think about the pop beats and the instruments and musicality of it all, you know, that's other people. But she's the one who's writing the lyrics. And so even though sometimes a song can like have just sort of like an upbeat poppy feel, there can be something much deeper and more complex to it than you would even imagine. Like an example that comes to mind is Out of the Woods, where when you read it on a page, you're like, the song is so repetitive. Like, what's up with this? But then you hear it and you're like, are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Like the combination of her choice to repeat that line over and over and over again and the sort of anxious feeling of the music creates this song that is, you know, it's catchy, but it also has this sort of like emotional resonance where it's just like, I can't feel, or I don't feel like I can be myself. I don't feel like we're in safe territory here. And it very much creates this deeper feeling than just like a bop like Shake It Off, you know? Yeah. And so I think in recent years, she's really leaned into that. And so even though you get songs that are really poppy, like Karma and Bejeweled, and even But Daddy, I Love Him is another good example where it's just like, it's very like, or I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. Peppy and upbeat. Devastating lyrics, you know? Like, just so much detail and beautiful storytelling and extremely good command of language. I'm so impressed with just her, the different kinds of linguistic tools she uses to craft songs that sound linguistically really cool. It's not just about the music behind it, but just the way it rolls off the tongue, the way you would sing it, the breath control required to do it, the mouth movements and tongue and all of that, like, that are required to make some of those sounds and to like do it. It's so impressive what she does. And I do think that a lot of people underestimate her, But there are an equal number of people who get it and get it hard. Like, holy moly, again, like I alluded to in the opening, oversaturation. You know, a lot of people are like, is Taylor reaching a point of overexposure? And I mean, yes and no. I think there are some people who are just coming to her who are not sick of this yet. And there are other people who are like, I've been here for the whole ride and I'm sticking on this train. And then there are other people who are like, I'm sick of hearing about her. And so, you know, you can't please everyone, but I don't think we're having her go away anytime soon. And yeah, I don't think Lorelai and Rory, for the most part, would be fans of hers. But I definitely think that there would be some moments where it's just undeniable that some things are too good to ignore. And, you know, Amy will never do it, but
yeah. And this is not the focus either, but I could also just real quick side tangent. I could see Lane coming to have a very healthy respect and appreciation for Taylor as well. Just as a musician in her own right, someone who is, you know, I hide CDs under the floorboard because I want to listen to things that my mother doesn't approve of. Mrs. Kim would definitely 1,000,000% never approve of Taylor Swift. But I feel like there's even some, you know, just resonance to be had there where I feel like Lane Kim would also be, again, not a total Swiftie, you know, going out to like concerts wearing, you know, t-shirts and the attire, but I feel like she would also just be like, girl knows how to write a song.
Yeah. And on that note, you know who else I think would probably be a fan of her is Zach. I think Zach would have mad respect for her.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that time they found out he was reading about NSYNC? I have a feeling that Taylor would, you know, be one of those guilty pleasures like Fleetwood Mac. You know, Taylor references Stevie Nicks in Clara Bow. And so, you know, I think Zach would have to pay attention and be like, what is she doing that Hep Alien should be doing?
Yep.
So,
excellent point.
Yeah, I think he would respect her songwriting prowess and just her sheer talent, you know? On top of being a great writer and a poet, she directs a lot of her own music videos and she plays both piano and guitar. I'm not sure if she plays any other instruments, but like most people don't even play one instrument and she plays two. Plus she sings and performs and does all of these other things. And so she's just a very impressive person, you know, whether you like it or not, whether it's your vibe or not, her talent can't be denied. And if you try, we will fight you.
Yep. Now I just need Hep Alien to be opening for Taylor Swift.
I need a Hep Alien cover a la Holler Back Girl or Now I'm a Believer. I need it. Sebastian Bach, if you're watching, and I know you are, let's get on this. Get the band back together and get on that, please.
Yep. This our shit.
Okay. We're 30 minutes in and we still haven't gotten to songs. So why don't we do that?
Let's do that.
All right. So the first song, okay. Also to preface this, technically what happened here was I made a list. Like I went through and ordered these songs and I told Laura what that order was. And I was like, I don't want to know what you think about these songs or how you interpret them, but like this is my list. And again, like I said, sort of chronological for the most part. It's sort of like as we walk through the show. And so I don't want to know what you think yet. And I was like, if there's anything that like you wouldn't put on the list or you would add to it, like we can discuss that as we go along, right? So basically this is like my brainworm of a list. So if it seems like I'm talking a lot or introducing all of the songs, that's why. And next week, we've already kind of discussed this up front. She has some extra thoughts on Rory and her playlist that I don't know about yet. So there'll probably be more of her next week.
Yep. And I will also say, with your list this week, though, there are some songs that you have put on the Lorelai list that I would just completely nix. And so when we get to them, I'll just flat out say, I don't think that was relevant. I don't see any parallels. I want to hear what you think. So there are some deviations I will still have this week.
Interesting. I also threw in one last audible at the last moment that she doesn't know about yet. So there's at least one more surprise coming for her. So without further ado, the first song on my playlist is Cardigan. So I thought this was an interesting choice. It's not really the chronological beginning of the story. It feels more like a reflection back on youth, on the beginning, which makes perfect sense for a show that's interested in things coming full circle.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, and I will say too, I personally am going to just take a lot of lyrics and extrapolate on them as a part of my analysis as well, because I think that's really relevant. So I'll start off doing that here with Cardigan. If this doesn't scream, I mean, I feel like a lot of these lyrics throughout all of these songs, I will just say like, oh, that screams Lorelai Gilmore. I'll probably say that a million times, but here we go. When you are young, they assume you know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If that wasn't Emily and Richard raising Lorelai within the household to just be like, young lady, just go to school, stay in line, don't do anything to like dishonor us, dishonor the cow, dishonor the family name. Please just keep it above board. And then Lorelai goes and gets pregnant at 16, and it just, here's our daughter just being a market failure in our eyes. Of course, she knows nothing. She doesn't even know how she's going to handle this child now, handle this pregnancy. What is she going to do? Both sets of parents, Lorelai and Chris's parents, try and step in because they just feel like their kids know nothing at this point in time. So I very much can see how Cardigan fits in with Lorelai's high school years, because it's just, it's Taylor saying, I've had this experience where when I was a kid, you know, you just look at grown-ups and they just look down at young people and say, like, these young people are stupid. They don't know what they're doing. You know, we're entrusting society to this next generation, and they're going to just completely destroy the earth, so to say. I mean, I feel like that's, you know, like Gen X, Gen Y, almost even looking at like millennials and just being like, they're going to ruin us. Very similar thought process. So it spoke to me a lot with how I think Lorelai was probably growing up in this household, just being like, everyone thinks that I'm just ignorant and that I don't know what I'm doing. And the second that she gets pregnant, she formulates her own game plan. She knows what she's going to do moving forward. She outlines what those next steps are going to be for her and how her life is going to, what her life is going to look like moving forward. Spoiler alert, it's not going to involve Chris, but she doesn't know nothing. This is a young person who actually succeeds remarkably despite one of the most significant life challenges that you could be thrown as a person of her age at that time.
Absolutely. And that's a line that's repeated throughout the song. It's very much the thesis statement, if you will, of like, you know, they assumed I knew nothing, but I knew something and I knew you. Speaking of Chris, you know, but there's another line just to sort of go along with what you said: sensual politics. When you are young, they assume you know nothing, and that made me think of, you know, sensual obviously has to do with like bodily desires, carnal nature, sexual appetites, that kind of stuff, and then politics. You know, so you have this like this very intimate thing between two people, but then you have, you know, government and decision making in large groups and power relations and democracy and diplomacy and all of those kind of things. And so it's very much like private and public. Taylor Swift is the master of juxtaposition. It's wild. There are going to be so many examples of this, but you know, so sensual politics to me feels like this agenda to control young women's sexuality, which is very much what was happening to Laura. You know, there are to Lorelai, not to you.
Okay, close enough.
Yeah, very, very close. Calculations were being made on her part, you know, like, how do we hide this from people? And what do we do? Do we send her away? Do we get rid of it? And there was a power differential there. You know, obviously in politics, there's always discussions of power, who has it, who doesn't. Children often do not have it. And so it feels very much like it speaks to the control exhibited by the parents in the situation. This is not a democracy. This is, I'm old, you're young. I'm small, you're or I'm big, you're small. I'm smart, you're dumb.
I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing that you can do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also felt like it was just very reminiscent of Lorelai just having to contend with the fact that when she made this choice to actively remove herself not only from Emily and Richard's household, but to remove herself from Chris's life and raise this child alone, that is a very significant undertaking. And I have to wonder how much Lorelai immediately, but also in the years to come, regretted that decision. Because I'm sure those first few years were very hard. You're living in a shed with no running water. You know, you're going paycheck to paycheck to probably provide for your kid and just make sure they have food to eat. And another line in Cardigan that spoke to me that just made me think of how she could how she might possibly regret that decision is just in terms of Chris, I knew you'd haunt all of my what ifs.
Yeah.
What if I had stayed? What if I had married you? What if I had let you get a job and go to work for Richard like he had outlined? What if I had done something different than the choices that I had made? Would life be better for me? Would life had been better for my daughter? And so there's a lot of contending with, did I make the right choice here? And I'm sure Lorelai had a lot of those moments too, where she wondered, probably even after Mia took her in, after she was living at the inn, was that the right call?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much regret she feels, but that line absolutely does speak to her whole mentality around him, where he's always that unanswered question, because she does wonder what if. And the rest of that bridge is sort of like, the smell of smoke would hang around this long because I knew everything when I was young. I knew I'd curse you for the longest time. So that fire imagery, it speaks to the passion that still lingers. Fire can either be life-giving or it can be dangerous and unpredictable and destructive. It's capable of hurting you. And there's this like noxious smoke left over that lingers, and you smell it in all of your clothes, and it just hangs in the air. And that is what Christopher is to her, is this sort of like, I can't see through the smoke. The passion still burns or was burning, and there's too much smoke in the air. But I also think this works the other way. I think Lorelai also haunts Chris, and he's willing to let that destroy him as well.
Yeah, oof, that's a haunting take. Just nomenclature off of what you just said, but I do agree that goes both ways. I'm sure Chris, even after he didn't go to Princeton, went on to Silicon Valley to try and make something of his life. I'm sure he was haunted by the fact that he never had as much involvement with Rory, during her childhood years as he would have liked to. He had to contend with the fact that I'm sure like young Christopher had a genuine love for Lorelai. Maybe not like a lifelong love that, endures and lasts through all things and you grow old together and die. But I'm sure he had genuine care and consideration and love for her. And now she's gone, and it wasn't of his making. He just had the rug pulled out from under him. So now it's just, I have to be haunted by that as well. What if she had just stayed, but she didn't even give me a chance?
Yeah. God, this song, like this whole song is so much of them. Like, we're just going to keep going on this for a while. The first chorus, but I knew you dancing in your Levi's, drunk under a streetlight. I knew you, hand under my sweatshirt, baby, kiss it better. And this to me feels like how Lorelai keeps saying, I know him so well. But what she knows is these flashes of their carefree teenage days. It's vignettes of the past, and it's not who Chris is now. And she doesn't get it. She's so like stuck in this sort of thinking about the past thing that it's hard for her to understand that he's progressed. And like the hand under the sweatshirt is very much teenage vibes. Baby kiss it better gives me the vibe of him like being her escape from her parents. Something about his understanding of her situation and his devil may care attitude feels like a balm to her. He is somehow able to comfort her, either with brighter visions for their future, or emotional support, or escapism, or whatever it is that he provides to her. Like, there's something where it's like, baby kiss it better, and he can do that for her somehow. He can draw stars around her scars, but she's still bleeding at the end of the day.
Yeah, but it also is because at that point in time, I don't think anybody knows Chris or knows Lorelai better than Chris does. And so we have, I knew you. Like, and you were always there for me on weekends. And I just think it calls into the fact too that we didn't get a lot of it. We never saw it and what those teenage years were like for them. But I'm sure Lorelai probably had massive like amounts of time where she just was like, I need to vent because Emily and Richard are driving me crazy. I'm not happy in this household. And Christopher was probably her outlet and her go-to as the person that she could trust and who knew her better than anybody else. And that's outlined in these lyrics as well.
Yeah. I knew you playing hide and seek and giving me your weekends, you know, these childish games, the playful banter, the back and forth, the evasiveness, the avoidance, the coming and going. 1 minute you're here, the next minute you're not. Blink and you're gone. So it's very much speaking to that whole, like, I know you, and I know that, like, you're playing games with me, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add about this song before we move on to the next?
Oh, yeah, we're not done here. Okay. To kiss in cars and downtown bars was all we needed. I'm thinking about, like, him crashing the Porsche. And also the story that Chris tells at Richard and Emily's vow renewal, the whole, you know, Lorelai kissing him for the first time in the parking lot of the A&P. It just gives me that sort of like, our parents aren't watching and we're sneaking kisses with each other wherever we can kind of vibes. And I can't believe that you haven't gotten to this point. I knew you stepping on the last train marked me like a blood stain. I knew you tried to change the ending, Peter losing Wendy. Sorry, I know it's a really like broken up. I knew you leaving like a father, running like water. Like, oh, this song is just, it's a stab to the heart, you know? Like, stepping on the last train. It's, you know, she uses train imagery a lot. It definitely has running away energy. The last train is getting out right in time or slinking off into the night. Water can run fast. It can be treacherous, but it can also be cleansing. Treacherous is entirely a pun, very much intended. Tried to change the ending, Peter losing Wendy. Just the Peter Pan illusions in all of this. You know, you've got this free-spirited young boy who will never grow up, a cultural icon of youthful innocence and escapism, you know, just the sort of the inability of Peter Pan to grow up, and Wendy having these feelings for him, having this love for him, but she has to go back to the real world and grow up while he gets to remain sort of stuck in naive childhood. You know, and it goes to the Peter Pan syndrome that is so often talked about with Chris, you know, these adults who, you know, look like grown-ups but can't face grown-up problems and responsibilities, and, you know, their behavior makes it difficult for them to hold on to relationships and to hold on to jobs and to have good relationships with their own parents. And it often does come out of, you know, neglect or overprotective parenting. And so, you know, there's a whole background to it, and I think it very much applies to Chris. But, and, you know, spoiler alert for a couple songs from now, Peter Pan is very much another reference that I make for Christopher. And so that one really, really stuck out to me. And then, of course, the leaving like a father. I don't even know that needs to be explained in any significant depth, because, you know, leaving like a father, running like water. Oof. Leaving like a father. I can't with that line in this show, because it's everyone. Richard, Jimmy, Mr. Kim, apparently, and of course, Christopher.
Yeah, and then as we get to the end of this song, we also have really great lines like, I knew I would curse you forever, which Lorelai indicates that, again, she makes that, you know, allegory. The door is always open for you, Chris. But was it? I feel like there was animosity that she held for Chris for not being as active and present in Rory's life as she was growing up. But again, you pushed him away. So how can you then turn around and say, I blame you for that, but I made the choice to be a single parent and remove you from this equation? And it's contentious too, because she obviously has love for Chris, and in the song there's love for this person because there's this understanding of this person knows me better than anyway, but I chose to remove them from my life, and then I hold that against them when it wasn't even their call to begin with. But then we come back to the end of the song, and it kind of just, again, it's just this vicious circle of, I hate you, but I love you. I hate you, but I love you. I pushed you away and I blame you for it. But at the end of the day, you were the person that knew me best, and you loved me when seemingly nobody else could. And then that last line, you put me on and said I was your favorite.
Yeah. Like, I am a cardigan that someone discarded under their bed and forgot about, but you never forget about me. I am always going to be your favorite. And, you know, and there's a comfort in that for both of them.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm ready to move on from cardigan.
Okay.
I feel like I slept on that song for the longest time.
I think, no, I don't know if I made you listen to that. I made you listen to Last Great American Dynasty.
Yeah. And it's like, I probably heard it, but it was one of those things where I was like, it didn't register or click until pretty recently. And I read the lyrics and I was like, and as I've been prepping for this episode, I think I listened to it like 5 times just today, you know, and I'm like, this song is stunning. Just the delicate piano and the sort of like, it almost sounds like something is tapping. It reminds me of, and this is super bizarre, but it reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The guys who are approximating horses by clapping coconuts together. It sounds like someone is like clapping hollow somethings together to make that sort of like clickety clack sound of the high heels on the cobblestones. And it's just the most like brilliant, weird percussion happening in the background that's meant to approximate the sound of someone walking on uneven ground. It's stunning.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, song 2 on my playlist is Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince. What do you say to that?
This is one of the ones that I would have removed.
I
would. I tried to draw some parallels with it, as I did with any song that was on your list here. But I feel like this song is just about a person feeling more passionate for a partner than I feel like Lorelai ever was of Chris. And not that she didn't love him, but I feel like this song alluded to just lifelong desire and just burning, not even lust, but just burning love and compassion and want for a person. And I don't think that Lorelai ever got there with Chris. I think there was care and consideration and compassion, and you're the father of my child. And as we have seen, they certainly tried to make their relationship work multiple times. But I don't ever think they had that burning desire, as was illustrated in this song, to make their partnership work. And that's why I think that time after time, for, you know, other reasons as well, it just always failed. So I would have actually just swiped this one off the playlist for Lorelai. But you have it on there for a reason, so go off.
All right. Well, one, the song literally mentions being 16, and it makes me think of what it might felt like for Lorelai as a pregnant teen in high school. The song is actually a political allegory about standing up against the right-wing nut jobs, set in a quote-unquote metaphorical high school. And it's about disillusionment with the system, but a more literal reading evokes like this wistful, scared 16-year-old girl who's facing criticism and negative attention and gossip for her actions and her relationships. And in that way, I guess it's almost like a continuation of the sensual politics from Cardigan, how everyone thinks they know what's best and give their opinions about your sexual decisions and try to control you by shaming you into compliance and silence, taking away your right to make decisions for yourself, you know? So there's that side of it. The other bit for me is like that sort of naivety of youth. And this is another one of those songs where you know, Taylor was 29 when she wrote this song, but it's a quote unquote about high school. But like I said, it's a political allegory. But, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. You take risks and you wind up pregnant. So, some of the lyrics in the song that really get me are, I adore you. I'm crazier for you than I was at 16. Lost in a film scene. So, the film scene obviously makes me think of Lorelai. And maybe it's a way that she sort of conceptualizes her life of, I'm watching a movie of my own life and I'm the lead character kind of energy. American Glory faded before me. Her family came over on the Mayflower, and now the quote unquote legacy ends with her. At least that's how everyone viewed it. It's like giving up the American dream. Now I'm feeling hopeless, ripped up my prom dress. In her case, it was more like her debutante dress, but she probably didn't go to prom either. I think she talked about that at one point, being like, I didn't get to go to prom. So there's that. Running through rose thorns, I saw the scoreboard and ran for my life. Lorelai ran for her life from school. Voted most likely to run away with you. That sounds like something that might have been said about her. The line about boys will be boys then, and just how Christopher kind of got off easier than her. All of that. And now the storm is coming, but it's you and me, and that's my whole world. And, that's less about Chris than I think it is about Rory. Like, once she realized she was pregnant, it's like, it's Lorelai, and it's whatever is going on, growing inside of her now. So there's, there's, like I said, this song almost has like a weird desperation and melancholy to it, where it's like, I have to get out. Everybody is judging me and is, there's nothing good anymore. I need to like fight for what's good. I don't really want to fight because nobody's going to win. I think you should come home and I'll never let you go. I know this is a fight. One day we're going to win. I think you should know it's you and me. That's my whole world. They whisper in the hallway, she's a bad, bad girl. It's, again, this sort of literal reading of it, I could totally make the connection of a pregnant girl in high school.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm not going to say that you're wrong, because you're not. I just think, like, this is why we're having this conversation, because I'm going to draw parallels where you don't, and vice versa. And we're going to have different playlists for these women. I can already tell you again, my playlist for Rory next week is going to deviate. But I still enjoy hearing your thoughts about these songs and the connections that you can make. That's what we're doing this for.
Fair enough. And fittingly enough, we are to song 3. So the cocktail that I made myself for this evening's festivities was called the Midnight Rain. I found the recipe on Pinterest, but I am done it. And so now we're going to move on to my roommate's cheap ass rosé, Screw Top Rosé. Had to throw in another midnight song reference. Taylor talks about rosé a lot. Rosé flowing with your chosen family. So here we go.
Tip it. Midnight Rain.
Midnight Rain. Okay, so for me, this song makes me think of Lorelai and Christopher and Dear Emily and Richard.
Get out of my head. I mean, but that's an easy take. Yeah. But this song to me was just so relatable for how Lorelai feels caged in as a young person by Emily and Richard. And how she probably felt like she was just a bird that had her wings cut off and just could not fly anywhere or leave the nest, because Emily and Richard were probably just, every time the wings started to grow back, it's just like, we're just going to clip them again because you're never going to go anywhere. And again, I'm just going to start by pulling from lyrics within the song. My town was a wasteland, full of cages, full of fences, pageant queens and big pretenders, but for some it was paradise. Lorelai hated that upbringing. She bucked at it and fought it at any chance that she could get, because it was just, again, like a bird that has had her wings clipped, who has been stunted, who is not free to grow or progress or live her own life in any sort of capacity until Rory comes along and not even has the backbone, but just has, I guess, like enough feathers, so to say, to be able to take flight and just be like, I can't do this anymore because you're stunting me. My daughter will be stunted if I continue to stay here. I get that the life that you have led has been great for you, and that in another world, maybe you would have had a daughter that was not me that would have enjoyed this and would have embraced this life. But I never have, and I've hated it. And so for others, it's wonderful. For me, this is my own personal hell and my own personal nightmare. And I need to just get out of here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that passage that you just read was, you know, it evokes the white picket fence life. And fences hem you in. They keep you trapped. It's like, this is my lawn. That's your lawn. Stay off my lawn. You know, it once again kind of ties to that American dream idea that Lorelai in some ways ascribes to and in some ways doesn't. You know, she eventually does want to be a landowner and wants to be independent and the whole, you know, Puritan work ethic thing. But the typical American dream of husband and wife, 2.5 kids and a dog, Dan Quayle, doesn't really appeal to her. It's not what she needs. It's not what she wants. And so, yeah, these hometown skeptics, if you will, are very much telling her this is the kind of life you need to lead, and she doesn't want it. She thinks this whole thing is vapid. She thinks it's unnecessary. She doesn't want it. And it also makes me think of the picket fence sharp as a knife, which is a lyric from High Infidelity off of Midnight's as well. So clearly that was something she was going through in like 2022. It's just the idea of like, I don't want the white picket fence life. And yeah, the wasteland. Oh, that's such a great word. You know, it makes me think of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which is about disillusionment and dissatisfaction, self-denial, you know, all of these things where it's like, things are bad. You know, this town is not a good place. It doesn't nourish her. It doesn't support her. It doesn't help her grow and flourish. You can't grow anything in barren wastelands. And that's where Stars Hollow comes in, because that's where she felt like she could be herself. You know, Hartford and that whole set that her parents were a part of was sucking the life out of her. She couldn't flourish there. She needed to be somewhere else. And that's part of why she left.
Exactly. And look at the very next line. My boy is a montage. Christopher was just a bad film reel that she was viewing about how her life was going to pan out if she stayed and if she stuck to the plan that Strobe, Francine, Emily, and Richard had for her after they find out about her pregnancy. If she stays, has the kid, lets Christopher go to work for Richard, get a white-collar job, bring home the bacon, Lorelai just raise the kid and be quiet. It was just the end of her life as she knew it at that moment in time. Like, there's no bouncing back from this. I'm just going to live the life that my parents want me to, but not the one that I want to have. And so it goes into the next, like one of the following lines. I broke his heart because he was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Because Christopher was ready to do the right thing, quote unquote, and get that job and bring home the money to raise and support this child and Lorelai. And good guy, Chris. Like, you're stepping up to the plate. I will give you credit for that all day, every day. I'm never going to flag you on that. But it was not what Lorelai wanted. And so to remove herself from that situation broke Chris's heart, even though it was inadvertent and she wasn't doing it callously or recklessly or with intent to harm. She was doing it because it was what she needed to do for her, but it still devastated Chris at the end of the day.
Yeah. In the end, Chris was a bit too much of a people pleaser. I don't know if I would call him a pathological people pleaser, but yeah. He was just nice. He was just Chris. You know, it wasn't enough for Lorelai. Yeah, My boy was a montage, a slow motion love potion that to me, maybe it's just my Harry Potter fandom coming out, because it's like, I think of love potions as being bad. They can often be used nefariously to manipulate someone into loving you. See how that worked out for Voldemort's mother? It's not real. It's not real love. It's fake. It's magic. It's intrigue. It's mystery. It's like there's something mystical about it. But at the end of the day, it's not real love. It's fake. It's fabricated. It's encouraged fictitiously.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think Chris, and I don't fault him for it because he was just so young and naive at that point. They both were, but had these blinders on to not really recognize what true love could look like. And so in his mind, and again, I'm just going to continue to draw on the lyrics. He wanted a bride. I was making my own name. Chris was okay with having that nuclear family unit, similar to like Donna Reed, where I come home, wife has dinner ready, you know, I make the money, the kids are like bathed. It's just all going to work out well. But Lorelai was never going to be content with that. She was always going to buck at it. And I think a part of Chris's growth and how that shaped out over the next few years was him coming to that realization where he says, like, it was always going to be you and Rory, like, you two against the world. I was never going to have a place there. I was never going to fit in. And I don't think he necessarily holds it against them, nor should he to any sort of significant extent. But it was just because he recognized Lorelai was a free spirit and she needed to be able to have her own life and make her own choices at that point. Christopher wasn't going to be a part of that, and she wasn't doing it maliciously, but it was just what was best for her.
It came like a postcard, picture perfect, shiny family, holiday, peppermint candy, but for him, it's every day, you know, and this makes me think of Santa's secret stuff, you know, except it's peppermint coffee at Weston's, you know, not peppermint candy. But, you know, a postcard is something that just arrives magically from someone's beautiful travels. And it's this snapshot of a perfect life, what life could look like on glossy paper. It's shiny, it's clean, it's, you know, and holidays, that's family time, right? That it speaks to this nuclear family that Lorelai's not always going to say no. I mean, functionally she does, but I don't think she does so on purpose. But, you know, Chris clearly wanted that whole like picture perfect family thing, and he wanted to make that happen. He wanted to marry Lorelai. He wanted to be with her and Rory. He wanted to fill the house with 7 Christmas trees and get them all new matching stockings and go caroling and do the whole, like, something out of a Norman Rockwell painting kind of family life. And Lorelai's like, I don't want it. I don't need it. It's no, get out of here with that.
Yep, agreed. But again, it's very telling of the fact that I just can't echo it enough. Like, Lorelai needed to be her own person. She hadn't been for the first 16 years of her life. And I think sometimes we do falter on her leaving Chris behind and like, there's the dust trail. I'll see you when I see you. But she did what she had to do in that moment. And I think this song also really illustrates the fact that sometimes your vision for what a family is going to look like and what your life is going to look like may not always be the same as your partner's. And there's a conversation to be had there, but it also needs to be okay sometimes.
Yeah. Going back a little bit, a slow motion love potion jumping off things in the ocean. You know, that makes me think of somebody who likes to take risks. And Christopher was kind of like that, you know? He still sort of wanted that conventional life. He was a product of that world. You know, he's a product of the barren wasteland that Lorelai so desperately seeks to escape. And he's okay with that. He's he does want to rebel against his parents and find his own success, but not in the same way that Lorelai does. And that's okay. But it makes their lifestyle goals incompatible. He is happy abiding by the customs of their world, and she just isn't. And so, in that sense, they can't really build anything that will grow. And, that goes to what you just said about, like, he wanted a bride. I was making my own name. Like, she wants to be her own person. And this kind of lifestyle doesn't support that. He wanted it comfortable. She wanted that pain. Pain comes from change and growth and struggle, and it can be good, and she knows that her life is going to come with pain and hurt and difficulties, and she's okay with that. She's ready and willing to go with the flow and just make it happen. And he wants stability, he wants safety, he wants financial comfort. To some people that could just sound boring or constricting, but he was all right with that. And so even though he had this rebellious streak where he liked to take certain risks, and he had this sort of air of excitement about him as a rebellious teenager, at the end of the day, he was the one who was willing to have this traditional life. And it was just something that she couldn't get on board with, because she was just like, this comes with all the strings, Pinocchio, and I don't want to be puppeted like this. I can't live in something that crushes my soul and my spirit like that.
Yeah. And I think the song ends well with her saying, like, well, with Taylor saying, like, sometimes we do get what we want. And I think that as Lorelai went into her 20s, into her 30s, she got the life that she wanted to have with Rory. And good for her. It doesn't always work out for everybody. It seems like Chris definitely needed more time to figure out what his life was going to look like and to find that path for himself. Lorelai found it sooner. And I think we should just applaud her for that and just be proud of her for getting to the place that she was at the end of the day.
Yeah. All the love we unravel and the life I gave away. Unraveling is something being pulled apart. It's love coming undone. She could have had this picture perfect life with Chris and Rory. It's an unanswered question for her. And she doesn't have access to the answers, at least not yet. I mean, eventually, arguably, she kind of gets her answer. But, it was set in stone for her what kind of life she should have had, the life she gave away. And it wasn't aligned with what she needed and wanted. That was the safe choice. But, the difficult path, the midnight rain, the unknown, the dark, the treacherous. Once again, I'm making the treacherous pun. It's alluring to her to not do what's expected of her.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts about that one?
Ooh, I guess sometimes we all get some kind of haunted, and I never think of him except on midnights like this. And This goes back to Cardigan, haunted by the what ifs, the temptation of that easy, comfortable life without all of the scrutiny. It's nostalgia and regret lingering together a little bit, especially sort of like when you're alone with your thoughts at night and like the world is quiet and dark and there's nothing but the unknown. Yeah.
That was kind of going to be Lorelai's MO, though. And she had to learn how to live with that.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about the song is just the word midnight. Midnight is the start of a new day, or even sometimes the start of a new year. It very much has the energy of fresh start, new day, renewal, rebirth, and yet it's in the middle of the night. It's in the dark. It's, once again, juxtaposition. It's this whole idea of, life in the dark. Typically, we think of living our lives in the daylight, and we grow and we flourish with sunlight. But this is sort of flipping that on its head. It's like, no, this is a new era. I'm a new person.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point to make. And I think it speaks to Lorelai's character as well, because she wasn't your typical, I want to choose my words carefully, like white collar, upper class citizen in the same way that Lorelai and Richard were. They were probably those 8 to 4, 9 to 5 people. And Lorelai was going to be the person that's just like, I'm like 4 to midnight, you know, and that needed to be okay. That's just who she was.
Yeah. Or she's the graveyard shift. Spoiler alert for the end of this podcast. Anyway.
Well, I mean, she probably is, but like, you get my point.
Yeah, I totally do. I just have to make a joke because that's how I roll.
Yeah.
But was that it for Midnight Rain for you?
That's all I've got. I'm ready to go on to the next one.
All right. Next up, we have You're on Your Own, Kid.
Yeah. This one, again, just speaks volumes to me with Lorelai contending to the fact that her life, as Emily and Richard have outlined it, was not what she wanted. I'll start by throwing down this lyric. I didn't choose this town. I dream of getting out.
Mm-hmm.
If that is not the crux of the first 16 to 17 years of this young woman's upbringing, I don't know what is. But it's immediately followed up by, there's only one who could make me stay. The difference here, though, is that we would think this person has to be Chris. But Chris, in my mind, was never going to do it, was never going to be enough. Whether he's the father of your child or not, I don't think there was any person in Lorelai's circle at that point in time who was going to make her stay in that Gilmore household. Even if she had not gotten pregnant, I think she was on the fast track to get out of there, to just run for the hills and never look back. And she was going to have to be on her own. And as we talk about this song more, will illustrate why. But that's the first takeaway I got from it, was just that she was willing to cut all of those ties and to sever any sort of support, financial or otherwise, and be on her own. And what does it take for a person to get to that moment in time? A lot of reckoning and devastation that Lorelai encountered.
Yeah, voted most likely to run away with you. You know, it comes back to that again. The song just, obviously, you know, it kind of starts out when she's young, right? Kid, you're on your own, kid. And there's so much youthful imagery in the song as well. And one of the lines that stuck out to me was from I can't talk. From sprinkler splashes to fireplace ashes. I love that alliteration. It's really hard to say. I don't think I've probably tried to sing it, but I don't know if I've ever tried to say it. It's just a very different, from sprinkler splashes to fireplace ashes. Like, it rolls off the tongue a lot easier when you try to sing it than say it. It's interesting imagery to me because the sprinkler reminds me of carefree youth in the backyard, water balloon fights with your friends. But then you have the fire and ash imagery, water and fire, dousing flames, destruction of innocence.
Yeah, that is an excellent point there as well. Something that I probably should have picked up on a little bit more, but I admittedly didn't. But again, I think it's truthful for Lorelai's upbringing. She was doused by Emily and Richard. How many times am I going to say that they stunted her upbringing? They stunted her growth. They were trying to mold her into being the daughter that they wanted, instead of recognizing, this is the daughter that you have. This is the one that you've got. Just appreciate her for the person that she is. And instead of trying to, you know, again, like you said, douse the fire, let her break free and just, I don't know, maybe like let the sprinkler water the lawn, see what grows, see what comes of it.
Yeah. I see the great escape. So long, Daisy May. I pick the petals. He loves me not. I see the great escape. You know, she saw that for herself. She wanted it. And for me, the picking the petals obviously recalls, you know, he loves me not, and he loves me not. And so this is sort of like Lorelai's understanding that Chris is not the real deal. He wants to be there for her, but this isn't love. This isn't enough to sustain a relationship. She can't rely on him, or so she thinks. And so that's her being like, he loves me not. And that's all that matters. I'm getting out. I'll run away. I play my songs in the parking lot. I'll run away.
Yeah. And she continued to do it. And as we move on this song, there were pages turned with the bridges burned. Because every time Lorelai tried to take a step forward, it probably did mean burning a bridge with Emily and Richard. It probably meant a fight after school, a fight at the dinner table, a fight because I don't want to go to this debutante ball. I don't want to have to go to another coming out party. You're trying to set me up with the whitest white guy son of one of your DAR friends from the club, or I don't want to go out with that person.
Chase Bradford, anyone?
I'll take celibacy for 1,000 instead of Chase Bradford. Thank you and good night, folks.
Yeah.
But every time that they tried to do something like that for her, it was probably just a step back that she had to take. And like the song says, bridges burned, when they're just trying to help her and think, we're just trying to get her set up well in life and get her into the next chapter and the next phase of her life. But she's rewinding. It's like a VHS tape that's just going in reverse at this moment in time. And you're turning back the pages on her life instead of leading her forward.
Mm-hmm. What you said about the debutante gown also made me think of, I looked around in a blood-soaked gown and I saw something they can't take away. A blood-soaked gown could mean any number of things, but for me, you'll find this funny. The connection my brain made was actually Lyanna Stark.
Oh, goodness.
Theon Greyjoy's dream of Lyanna Greyjoy in a white gown covered in gore, which is obviously supposed to be an allusion to her giving birth in, A Song of Ice and Fire. And so, a blood-soaked gown, it's just, it speaks of pain, maybe humiliation. The other thing that comes to mind is Carrie with the pig's blood. Just sort of the I'm standing in this beautiful dress and it's just it's probably expensive. A gown has a very specific connotation, right? So, you're at a fancy event, you're in a beautiful dress, but the dress is covered in blood for some reason. And it's such painful imagery. But I do sort of link it to childbirth in a way. And, it tracks with that time frame with the debutante dress. And, it just kind of goes along with the whole feeling of the song, which is I don't belong here. I need to get away. I feel out of place. I want to get out of my hometown. I want to pursue my own life and dreams. But there's this other potential future of white picket fences with Chris and Rory. But the song ends with her saying, "You're on your own, kid. Yeah, you can face this. You're on your own, kid. You always have been," Even with having two parents technically active in her life, Lorelai has always felt alone. She doesn't feel like she can trust her parents. She doesn't feel like she can go to them. She doesn't want them influencing her child. And so the best thing for her is to start to rely on herself, which is exactly what she says to Christopher on the steps in Dear Emily and Richard, which is we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. That was actually the final thought that I had for that song as well. Just the fact that you've got to do you, whether it's by choice or not. This is going to be your life now. You got to have that backbone and just know that you need to make life work for you and for your daughter at this moment in time, free of any sort of consideration that you may have moving forward. This is what it's going to be, and you've got to step up to the plate.
Yeah. Everything you lose is a step you take. Call a taxi to take you there. That's
Uber.
Stop making that sound. Okay, next up, I put State of Grace. Again, State of Grace truther. I love this song.
Max Medina.
Interesting. I sort of envision this. Okay. Picture this. It's 2012. Amy Sherman Palladino is not the showrunner for Gilmore Girls, but we have that same opening shot on Stars Hollow. And instead of the laws, there she goes, it's State of Grace.
Interesting.
I'm walking fast through the traffic lights. Busy streets and busy lives are all we know, and it's touch and go. I mean, obviously, Stars Hollow isn't necessarily like a busy, bustling town, but it is a very sort of like walkable community. People are out and about. Everybody knows each other. There's an energy in the air. And I mean, this is foreshadowing for the fact that the town finally gets a traffic light. But I don't know. There was just something about the imagery of the song. For me, it feels like upstate New York, which has a lot of similarities to Connecticut. And so I was just like, ooh, this feels like Stars Hollow. It feels like the pilot. I don't know why. It's just a vibe.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely understand that as well. I'm envisioning that montage now as she walks into Luke with that song. Like when I first started trying to draw parallels here, based off of one of the initial lyrics in the song, my mind went to Max Medina, because one of the earliest lyrics in State of Grace is, "You come around and the armor falls, pierce the room like a cannonball." And it just makes me fast forward to Keg Max, where she goes to see him in his classroom while he's just grading papers and trying to get some work done. And he says, like, "You're a mythological creature who casts a spell on me and makes me act stupid." Essentially, like, I cannot be around you. And so when we have that, like, and that's just Lorelai. You come around and the armor falls. Max is not able to abstain from her. And like the drawbridge just gets lowered. All of the walls come down when she's around, because it's Lorelai Gilmore. She's this beautiful mythological goddess who can resist. And so that's where I started to think like, ooh, that's really reminding me of like Max right off the bat, even though he's not immediately present like so early on with this episode. And, you know, those first moments that you see in Stars Hollow, it's more setting the stage for Lorelai and Rory's relationship. But it just made me think like, foundation?
That's an interesting take that I hadn't considered. For me, that made me think about like Luke and Lorelai. Luke is one of the few people who Lorelai lets her armor down for. You know, she can drop the facade a little bit around him in a way that she can't or doesn't with other people. And I'm thinking of Incredible Sinking Lorelai's in particular, you know, like there's just something about their friendship where she trusts him so much, mostly, where it's like, who else is she going to ask to do these things for her? And so she doesn't have to be strong. She doesn't have to fight all the time. You know, you wear armor when you're fighting or when you're scared. And so she can be more herself around him and let that armor drop a little bit. And I love that pierce the room like a cannonball line. Like, man, again, with the imagery here, you know, like piercing is puncturing, it's stabbing. It's like, it's a very small like point of entry. Whereas a cannonball is this like big, heavy projectile that is just blunt force. You know, you can take down a castle and an entire like regiment of troops with one cannonball. And it's not even just the first impact either. Like it will keep bouncing and it will like hit the ground and come up and like hit more people. And so anytime cannonballs actually hit, it's a very like violent, gory thing. It's there's so much energy. There's a lot of kinetic energy in a round shot. And so it's got the momentum to just like destroy things. You pierce the room like something that has the possibility to destroy, you know, like you are the center of attention, you know, you command a room. You force your way in this very like narrow thing, but then you just blow it all up. And it's just such interesting imagery to, again, juxtaposition, put those against each other. Cannonballs don't pierce. they annihilate. And another cool thing about cannonballs is that sometimes they would be heated, and so they would glow red hot.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor
and it also
Swift.
it also just makes me think, like, I think Taylor needs to just maybe take a, like, they obviously took a page out of maybe like Miley Cyrus's book or vice versa, or partner up, because it just makes me think of like Wrecking Ball. I came in like a wrecking ball. I never hit so hard in love. And all I wanted was to break your walls, but all you ever did was wreck me. And you just wreck me, and you wreck me, and you wreck me. And I feel like that was also not even just with Max and Lorelai, with Max and Luke too. Like, they're constantly trying to break down each other's walls. Luke is always trying to get in and just be there for Lorelai and just let me be a part of your life. And she shunts him time and time again. With Max too. And I just feel like there are these men in Lorelai's life who it's just like, I'm knocking on the door. Max says it like, one of these days you're going to have to decide that like some guy is worth opening that door for. I'm just volunteering to be that person. I feel like Luke and Max were very similar in that regard, where like both of these men just had really genuine passion for Lorelai and wanted to be committed. And they're just saying to her, listen, give me that chance and let me take it, which is what we also see. Again, I don't want to tangentialize too much on Miley's song because it's a Taylor focus, but it's what State of Grace says as well, because it's a worthwhile fight. And love is a ruthless game unless you play it good and right. And I feel like both of these men were just trying to do right by Lorelai and just say, like, listen, I'm trying here. Like, what more can I do for you? What more can I show you? But you've got to open yourself up to me.
Yeah. You just made a connection I hadn't even thought about with the whole, like, love is a game and how Luke and Max were kind of competing with each other near the end of the season there. So that was an interesting one. Backing up a little bit, the opening lyrics, I'm walking fast through the traffic lights, busy streets and busy lives. It reminds me of just how much she like swooshes. Reminds me of like a messenger, nothing more, when Rory is gone and she moves at light speed to outrun her feelings. It's just, there's this, again, kinetic energy to her. There she goes, right? And there's so much energy in her and in the song. And all we know is touch and go. So touch and go obviously refers to something that's uncertain. This slope is treacherous, right? And another sort of use of this phrase is when an aircraft is trying to do this like maneuver where they go up a little bit and then touch back down almost immediately. And so it also feels like, you know, there's this hesitancy to the common vernacular use of it, but there's also this other interpretation where it's just like this thing is like kind of getting off the ground but then coming right back down. Like it can't get going, can't get off the ground. So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially because this is the first episode, literally, and also the first episode where we get any hint that Luke and Lorelai might be a thing. And it's very touch and go for years. There's so much push and pull and games that they play with each other and with the other people in their lives. And yeah, so the song definitely, like, there's something about the song that just makes me think of Lorelai, which is why I made this list.
Yeah. And another line in between those initial, like those first few lines and like the armor and cannonball line, we fall in love till it hurts or bleeds or fades in time. And I feel like that is so true of a lot of Lorelai's men. I feel like it's particularly true of Chris as well, because you try and it just doesn't work out and you get disinterested and you lose heart. I feel like she lost heart with Max. Like, he was enamored, he was in love, he was ready to take that next step, and she just wasn't at that place. We see it with a lot of her other guys too that don't get as much screen time. But I feel like Lorelai was just very much, some of these guys are a flash in the pan and they're exciting at first and they're lively and it's just fireworks and it's initially fun and it's initially exciting. But if you can't maintain that and keep up that excitement for me, that's where my love for you is going to fade in time. Perhaps because it didn't even exist to begin with, but just because you couldn't keep me captivated enough.
Yeah. Now all we know is don't let go. We are alone, just you and me, up in your room, and our slates are clean. Ooh, that's good. Obviously that evokes a writing slate, like a chalkboard kind of vibe. And apparently there's an Outer Limits episode called Blank Slate, which is about like memory loss. And Outer Limits is a show that Luke references at one point, so that's fun. Just twin fire signs for blue eyes. Scott and Lauren both have blue eyes, but neither of them are fire signs. Lorelai is a Taurus, which is an earth sign, and Luke is a Scorpio, which is a water sign. And so I don't really know these things. I had to look this up. But one thing that I did, like, I sort of Googled, like, Taurus and Scorpio together. And it's just like, the main similarity between Scorpio and Taurus is that they're both fixed signs, meaning they won't change their minds about a person overnight. It takes a long time for two people to get comfortable and trust each other. But once they do, it'll be long-lasting, as they rarely have a change of heart once they're committed. The pair has one major personality trait in common. They're stubborn.
Lorelai stubborn?
Never. I'm truly wondering, and we may have to do a whole episode investigating this. I'm truly wondering if Amy knows something about the Zodiac and worked it into her character's personalities, because Paris feels very much like a Capricorn, and I'm going to need some proof about that. But these two are just like, it's too on. It's too close for it to be a coincidence. So we might have to investigate that. But
yeah, I think we're going to have to slate or slot in a Zodiac episode somewhere down the line. Because my mind's already racing. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Ugh, I love this bit. So you were never a saint, and I've loved in shades of wrong. We learn to live with the pain, mosaic broken hearts. But this love is brave and wild. You know? Just wild. It's uncontrollable. It's sensational. It's off the like, I'm thinking of like a wild pitch where like you totally missed the target. It's just like gone. It's uncivilized. It's being out in the forest with nobody around. There are so many connotations to wild that could be applied here, and they all work for Lorelai. Except maybe the forest. She doesn't seem like a forest gal, but that sort of untamed natural state, shall we say.
And then it immediately, and I want to pose this question to you as well, it immediately gets followed up by saying, and I never saw you coming, and I'll never be the same. But then one of the next lines after that, shortly after that, is, these are the hands of fate, you're my Achilles heel.
Ooh, yes.
Now, I feel like a large swath of the fandom would say that that's Luke, who is Lorelai's Achilles heel. Would you give him that honor and that onus? Or did you ever think that there was another guy in Lorelai's life who that could apply to more?
Okay, the hands of fate thing does kind of feel like Luke. The Achilles heel might be Christopher, though. Like, your weakness when otherwise you're strong and capable. Christopher feels like that sort of like that thing she can't shake, that she can't quite get past. But yeah, the hands of fate, the whole like, this is the golden age of something right and real. Like this is a golden tapestry of invisible strings, tying them together. It's the hands of fate. It makes me think of that Sabrina episode where she saves Morgan from, okay, spoilers, but like Morgan is about to fall down an elevator shaft, and Sabrina saves her, but the fates intended for Morgan to die. And so now they're trying to exact revenge on Sabrina. They're like, we're going to kill you instead. And so Sabrina's literally trying to like reweave the tapestry of her own life to prevent the bad thing that the fates have set out for her. Sophia Bush is in this episode too, which is neither here nor there, but I just thought it was fun. And so it makes me think of that, where it's like there's this literal personification of people who are puppeting, like Greek mythological creatures, essentially, who are puppeting humans and who are setting things in motion where we can't even see. I never saw you coming and I'll never be the same. That fate is inescapable. There's definitely a lot of fatalism that runs through Taylor's work. So this is an early example of that, where it's like, you know, we have no control here. And in a way, the hands of fate are the hands of the writers on this one. Because you can tell from the pilot that they are fated. Like there's something there that must be answered for in narrative terms. And if we hadn't gotten that, I think it would have been a profound disappointment.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else about this particular song? I know we still have a few lyrics left, and then I actually have something that I want to hit you with before we move on to what was next on your list.
Interesting. I have a few more thoughts on this one, and it goes to like the title itself. You know, the word grace has possibly more meanings than any other word in the human language. Like there are so many uses for the word grace. I mean, there's a lot of religious imagery in this, a lot of classical imagery as well, with sort of like the Greek mythology and the Mosaic broken hearts. But grace in Christianity is the state of the absence of mortal sin. And so, you know, there's this sort of like purity to the imagery from that sort of like Christian side. And she uses a lot of religious diction in her songs. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. There's got to be others. False God. Like, just to name a few. Just so many. Oh, but Daddy, I Love Him, obviously. Guilty as Sin. She really likes to explore this concept of religion and control, belief, sin, all of that kind of stuff. But grace is one of those interesting ones where it's like, not only can it refer to that sort of like perfect pure state of humans being sanctified and godlike, but we have so many other interpretations of this word. It can mean elegance, stylishness, poise, finesse, charm, propriety, diplomacy, etiquette, like getting favor from someone, being in their good graces, privileges, being graced by something. There are just so many ways that you could interpret that word alone. And I think everything I just said is sort of like Lorelai, you know, especially the charm and the, you know, just having that sort of ease about her.
Yeah. Excellent point. And I didn't even think about like the religious connotations to that either. So that definitely has given me a lot more to think about and speculate on. And it's right there in the title, State of Grace. So excellent parallel there as well. This is why we're having these conversations.
Right? I've got one more. The whole love is a ruthless game unless you play it good and right. There's definitely a lot of other moments like this in her discography as well. And the thing that comes to mind specifically is Mastermind from Midnight's. Once upon a time, the planets and the fates and all the stars aligned. You know, a chain reaction of counter moves to assess the equation of you. Checkmate, I couldn't lose. What if I told you none of it was accidental? And the first night that you saw me, nothing was going to stop me. I laid the groundwork, and then just like clockwork, the dominoes cascaded in a line. It was all by design. All the wisest women had to do it this way because we were born to be a pawn in someone else's game. Like, just all these, you know, the idea of a game, a competition, a strategy, people being in opposition to each other, competing. but also, it's something that can be playful. It can be fun, sports being a good example. But love is definitely something, both for Lorelai and Taylor, I think, where it's like, there's a game to be played here. And for them, there's no other way but to see this as sort of like a weird power struggle or a competition, whether it's between like Lorelai and Nicole or Lorelai and Luke for the upper hand within their own relationship.
Yeah. Excellent points. Excellent points. I just want to start like writing, like just scribbling down all these notes. Like,
as if I don't have a 51-page document.
There can never be enough notation, but I'm also just thinking, did we really think that we were going to do this in just one shot?
Yeah, we've only been going for an hour and a half, and we're still in season 1.
And we have a gamut of songs that span all 7 seasons in the revival. So yeah, this might get broken up.
This might have to get broken up.
But anything else on State of Grace? And then I'm going to interject before we move on to the next song on your list.
Hit me with it.
Okay. The next song on your list was Snow on the Beach, which we'll still get to. But I'm going to insert here and deviate and say that this is where I would, let me get this pulled up here. Go back to my notes. Invisible String.
Okay.
There's a lot of Rory and Jess connotations that I feel like I can draw from it, and I might have to circle back on those when we get to her, but it makes this song also has me really thinking of Lorelai, because obviously it doesn't work out with Christopher in their teenage years because she decides to go at parented alone. We'll talk about it. He comes back in season 1. We haven't even gotten there yet. Christopher returns, but with Chris coming back, with Max coming into the picture, and this, I think it would be a good segue into Snow on the Beach, because when Lorelai starts getting with Max, Luke is very jealous by it and hurt by it because he sees them together and he starts getting those pangs of realization, why not me? And it's, well, because, dude, you didn't act on it maybe as quickly as you should have. But that's where this song starts to make me think it's a good insertion here, because for Luke, and again, I'm just going to start pulling from some lyrics from Invisible String. Time, curious time, gave me no compasses, gave me no signs. Were there clues I didn't see? And so for Lorelai, I think, yeah, right off the bat, there are clues that you didn't see. From the pilot, I think it's very clear to anybody watching this show that there's chemistry with Lorelai and Luke. Right off the bat, I think we're expecting these two people are going to wind up together, whether or not Lorelai instantly gets with him or has to go through relationships with other men to figure out what she wants. But the clues that you don't see, yeah, absolutely. Like, Luke does things from, like, and it's not even just in season 1, from start to finish. He's always there for Lorelai. He's always there to support her. Rory, to an extent. And it's subtle, but it's things that Lorelai should have picked up on, that I think we've also alluded to, how, like, all of Stars Hollow can see that Luke has, like, a massive crush on Lorelai and just wants to be that person in her life. And Lorelai just continues to be blind to those signs while she dates other people like Max and lets him come into her life, and just completely is not recognizing the pain that that's causing Luke or the signs that are there. And I feel like there are some strings that were there that Lorelai is ignoring, that eventually do tie them, spoiler alert, together by the time we get to the end of the revival.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a very general sense, I could see the whole Invisible String of Fate with this song. I feel like it doesn't connect as strongly for me as some of the other ones. Although there's a lyric that's jumping out at me. A string that pulled me out of all the wrong arms right into that dive bar. And I'm rewriting it in my head too. A string that pulled me out of all the wrong arms right into that diner.
It's a good rewrite.
What can I say? Yeah. This one is so much about that whole, like, isn't it pretty to think that the universe had a plan for us? And I don't know that either Luke or Lorelai thinks that way. I mean, they sort of have some conversations in the future about, like, oh, hey, maybe we were at the same beach at the same time 20 years ago or whatever it was, when they're talking at the house on Martha's Vineyard. But I don't know that either of them really truly believes that their love was fated like this. And it's such a sort of like sweet song. And I don't know that Luke or Lorelai could ever be this earnest.
Maybe not Lorelai, but I could see this being like, "Oh, Luke, you're a softie." I mean, like, just thinking back to, like, the man getting self-help tapes. Be like, "Can you see her face? Whose face do you see?" And then just him reckoning with, like, yeah, it's Lorelai. That's the face that I see. And even in him, and like just wanting to do sweet and genuine things for Lorelai, it's not his character, and I think that's why he struggles with it. So it's not a part of his innate nature, but I think he wants to break that mold and try and be that person for her because he loves her. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree. It's not who Luke is at his core, but I think there are moments where he tries to pull that out and give Lorelai those, like, really sweet and tender moments and thoughts and gestures.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes to mind too is Written in the Stars. He does keep hold of the horoscope, which is sort of one of those woo-woo things that tries to predict the future a little bit. And so there is that sort of mystical element implied in that episode, whether it's for Luke and Lorelai or Rory and Logan or both, that this was meant to be. So, like, there is, from our perspective as the audience, some of that idea of fate and intention and the universe having grander plans. But, like, just some of the parts of that song just feel too specific to feel like it really applies to them, which is probably why it didn't, like, click for me as a song that, like, should obviously be on this list.
Yeah, no. But again, we're gonna have deviations. This
Indeed.
is why we're doing this.
Yeah, everybody comes at it with a different perspective and a different thought or experience or whatever, and that's where the fun lies. And that's why we don't tell each other what we're doing before we do it.
Nope.
Keeps things interesting.
Just you wait.
Okay. Well, my next song was Snow on the Beach, which for me is the Love and War and Snow episode. It's like snow at the beach, weird but fucking beautiful. Flying in a dream, stars by the pocketful. You wanting me tonight feels impossible, but it's coming down, no sound. It's all around, like snow at the beach.
Yeah, and it obviously stems from, spoilers again, obviously, Max rolls up into Stars Hollow completely unannounced without telling Lorelai that he's going to be there. My car broke down. I'm stuck here. I have nowhere else to go. Oh, hey, Lorelai. Funny seeing you in this town that you actually live in. What are you doing tonight? We've talked about how that may or may not have been a little bit too orchestrated. But case in point, I can definitely see and appreciate your take here on this, where it's like the second that Lorelai sees him across the way at Gypsy's, her eyes just light up like Christmas trees, pun intended. Whether or not he purposefully landed himself in Stars Hollow that night, it was just a very beautiful moment of those two looking at each other from across the way, of them both just realizing as the evening went on, like, yeah, we both want this to happen. this is where this is leading. Lorelai obviously has some reservations because I don't normally let men in the house, but they continue to proceed and get to that moment in time. And so it's very just a beautiful and falls in line with the lyrics here. So I totally get that.
Yeah, the scene feels like what I once saw on a screen. You know, they even go to see a movie together, and it does. It feels like something out of an old movie. It's weird but fucking beautiful, right? How just idyllic the town looks and how romantic the whole thing is, that this happened serendipitously. So, you know, there's not a lot of other substance in this song, but, you know, I smell snow. And snow being on the beach, something about this just felt like that moment for me, where it's all around, it's silent, it's this quiet night of a snowstorm where everybody's sort of trapped where they are, and it puts these two characters together in a very interesting situation. And so I just thought it spoke to that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely drew a lot of those similar parallels as well. The only thing that I can say is that I think it was still at that moment in time when we get to Love and War and Snow that Max wanted Lorelai more than Lorelai wanted Max at that point in time. I feel like his lust and his love was a little bit greater than hers, but he was patient and compassionate and kind in letting her get caught up to speed. And I think that's really just a beautiful thing for Max to have done as well, to give her that time to be on par with where he is. Oh, golf. Okay, I didn't do that, but
kill me now. Next up on my list, so high school. So for me, this brings up the moment when Christopher comes back in, and you know, like in the episode, Lorelai's talking to Suki and says, you know, then he looks at me and it's Christopher. You know, I feel so high school every time I look at you. In the blink of a crinkling eye, I'm sinking, our fingers entwined, cheeks pink in the twinkling lights. Tell me about the first time you saw me. That reminds me again of the vow renewal, Wedding Bell Blues, when Chris recounts the story of their first kiss. It has this sort of carefree youthfulness to it. And obviously the title feeds into that. It's bittersweet 16 suddenly. I'm watching American Pie with you on Saturday night. Your friends are around, so be quiet. I'm trying to stifle my sighs because I feel so high school. Are you going to marry, kiss, or kill me? It's just a game, but really, I'm betting on all three for us too.
Yeah. This to me, I definitely see the Chris parallels, and maybe if we had gotten a little more context or clarity into what Chris was actually like as a high schooler and when he was around his guy friends, I might be able to buy into a little bit more. It almost felt like a little bit frat boyish to me. And not that Chris couldn't have fallen into that behavior. I mean, again, we don't know what he's like when he's having guys night and he's around all of his dude friends, but he seemed to me to not necessarily always be on that extreme end of the spectrum, and more just like, yeah, I want to hang out with my guy friends, all of guys nights, but at the end of the day, like, I'll have a date night with Lorelai, like, that's just fun, and she's nice to be around. And I feel like it could have also potentially stemmed from the emotional void that was in place within his household from Strobe and Francine. Again, he probably, like, we've talked about this, Chris was probably just not a kid that was loved. So if Lorelai can give him that sort of comfort and emotional stability and fill that void, she probably was. And it just meant that, like, yeah, he could have had like nights out with his guy friends and just going on like another lyric, like, you guys are gonna play Grand Theft Auto and you're gonna do all your guy things and the bottles are gonna flow. But I don't think he would ever have been as dismissive of Lorelai. I think he would have balanced the two a little bit better in terms of how he spends his time.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, the song just feels like reminiscing about youth. It feels like young love, innocent, pure, uncomplicated. I didn't even like go so deep as to think about those things when it comes to this. I think it's just the whole like Chris shows up and Lorelai is transported back to high school. It's like a time travel thing where suddenly we're 16 again. And, you know, I feel like I'm right back where I started. So that's where I was going with this particular song. I just obviously have to shout out the line, truth dare, spin bottles, you know how to ball, I know Aristotle. Brand new, full throttle, touch me while you bros play Grand Theft Auto. Like, that's probably my least favorite lyric on the whole album is the whole touch me while you're... I get it, I just don't like it.
I don't either, and we don't have to.
Exactly, it's fine. But, so that is just sort of the whole, like, Chris shows back up, the butterflies come up, the feelings are resurfacing. But then, do you have anything else to say about this song before I move us into the next one?
Nope, I think that was it for that one for me.
Okay, because the next song on my list is Peter.
This is one I would not have on my list that I would take off.
What? The song is so Christopher. I don't know how you're just like, no.
Because I feel like it's just... I'll say this. It's a song about, I feel like, being too hung up waiting on somebody and waiting for the partner that you want to have. And for Chris, I feel like Lorelai was always going to be his end game. And so, you know, eventually he moves on to Sherry and he gets with her. But I feel like Lorelai was never going to be waiting on Chris in the same way that Chris was always going to be just waiting on her.
But she explicitly says that I was subconsciously waiting for you. We know that there's this part of her that always wanted to be with him, that wanted to see if he could live up to this whole ideal, you know?
Right, but how long was she going to wait on that before she realized, like, this is never going to be a thing. I can't wait on you forever. And I think we do see Lorelai eventually getting to that point.
15 years, apparently, and we'll get there in a few songs. But for me, this one, again, goes back to the cardigan imagery, Peter losing Wendy. This is the explication of that, where it's really digging into why this broke down and how his immaturity has impacted her. And so it's like, forgive me, Peter, my lost, fearless leader. She's apologetic that she left him the way that she did, you know? And I think we see that time and again, and that goes to her having the door open for him, because it's like, I don't want to be with you, but I'm also not going to block you from seeing Rory. And so it was just kind of like the happy medium she could find for herself. But the other thing that makes me think of is Chris was initially, in a way, Lorelai's leader, at least on something that we saw in Dear Emily and Richard, which is that it was his idea to go to Europe. He was fearless about ditching his parents' expectations in a way that she wasn't initially. She's like, no, the plans came over on the Mayflower. And he is like, I'm going to Europe. I'm going to sleep on park benches. I'm going to do whatever it takes to like explore. And obviously we find out that he's lost. He's a lost, fearless leader. He doesn't even know where he's going. But in closets like Cedar, preserved from when we were just kids, they're frozen in their childhood. Cedar preserves things. It repels insects. It prevents the spread of mold and mildew. So things can be sort of like preserved in there. And there are also a lot of obviously strong correlations between smell and memory. And so this very much feels like we're calling back to a childhood that is still with us because people keep putting it on us. And that moves us into, is it something I did? The goddess of timing once found us beguiling. The timing wasn't right. Then it wasn't meant to be. You know? There's an element of intrigue and perplexity, something you can't figure out. And, you know, beguiling could be charming. Christopher's kind of charming, or it could be deceptive, you know? It's the false start. It's the red herring, right? So there's so much here. I didn't want to come down. I thought it was just goodbye for now. once again, this idea of this will probably happen eventually. We just have to do other things first. Time will get us there. You said you were going to grow up. Then you were going to come find me. Words from the mouths of babes, promises oceans deep, but never to keep. Christopher doesn't keep that promise that he's going to be, well, I mean, we don't know that he makes a promise, but maybe Lorelai views it as some sort of implicit promise that was broken, where it's just like, bro, we're 32 and like you're still acting like a teenager and we can't do this anymore. Are you still a mind reader, a natural scene stealer? I've heard great things, Peter, but life was always easier on you than it was on me. They get each other, they understand each other, and this makes me think of the baby shower when Lorelai meets Sherry's friends and she gets this sort of like side of Christopher that she hasn't really seen before. They think he's charming. They think he's a catch. She gets good word of mouth from other people that haven't known him since he was a baby, and she starts to take on this alternative perspective. But it still doesn't erase the fact that he was the one who got to escape and go off and still be a kid while she had to grow up. And she got dealt a rough hand that she chose to play. So life's not only easier on him, but people are easier on him. And he's held to a different standard than her, and she's not fond of that. That's just the first half of this song. Like, how can you leave this song off the list? It's so their relationship. I get what you're saying about like she's not holding on to him as tightly, but like I think she is. We see that later, and I'll get there. But
yeah, I mean, I think like the chorus for me is what stood out the most, if anything, from this song when she says, "You said you were going to grow up. Then you said you were going to come find me." And we definitely see Chris making those steps and making those moves. He goes to Silicon Valley. He tries to have business ventures. Some of them fail. Not everything works out. He comes to Stars Hollow and Christopher returns, tries to be present again in Rory's life in a way that he had, or in more of a way than he had previously. But in like, I just think to like Lorelai just being like, well, it's taken him this long to grow up. You know, why couldn't he have done it sooner? Why couldn't he have come found us sooner? And again, I'm sure there were instances where he visited or made efforts as Rory was a child. And I certainly don't fault Christopher for needing to take the time to figure out what his life was going to look like. But at some point in time, I think maybe Lorelai hit that moment of, well, you know, we're not 16 anymore. We're not 18 anymore. We're not even in our 20s anymore. How long is it going to take for Christopher to grow up and come find us? Rory's 16. She's fully baked at this point. I mean, that's like a point that Lorelai makes to Max when he's like, well, what parental duties should I have here? Like, how should I be disciplining her? And Lorelai says to Max, well, she's fine. Like, she's done. You know, she's grown. Like, you don't need to worry about that. And I feel like maybe that was kind of the mindset that Lorelai had with Chris, where it's like, by the time that you are established and you're ready to be a part of her life, like, it's just not even a necessity anymore in terms of child rearing. And it's cool that you want to be there for her as like, oh, you're her biological father. But there was so much more guidance and counsel that she would have benefited from had you just gotten it together sooner.
But yeah, that's the whole Peter Pan idea, right? Like, he can't get it together. He never will. He is almost doomed to be stuck in this eternal childlike state. And that's sort of what she's lamenting about here, where it's like, we did what we could, and I waited for you in a lot of ways. I didn't want to hang around. We said it was just goodbye for now, and I won't confess that I waited, but I let the lamp burn. It took her 17 years to confess that she was subconsciously waiting for him. She didn't extinguish the flame in the lamp. She held a flame for him. The passion still burned in the background, even when she was just struggling to survive, you know? It was something she always held on to. So there's so much of that coming through in this song for me. And it's just, it's so good. Some like less obvious connections I also made was, and sometimes it gets me when crossing your jet stream. The jet stream is a westerly wind. It flows west to east, California to Connecticut. We both did the best we could underneath the same moon in different galaxies. They were in basically the same situation. They both got pregnant, but they ended up with wildly different circumstances as they moved through it. And yeah, California and Connecticut are different galaxies. So there's that. There's bound to be more. As the men masqueraded, I hoped you'd return with your feet on the ground. Tell me what you learned. Masquerade makes me think of the Dead Ball with Rory in Presenting Lorelai Gilmore. People in outfits parading around, men masquerading. You have the fathers and the escorts. And he does return with his feet on the ground. And he tells her that he learned that he likes the stability. And so she's finally starting to see Peter's growing up. But it's too late. The protagonist of this song is like, the lamp is burned out. Goodbye. Like you couldn't do it. But in this case, Peter actually kind of stepped up and was like, yeah, I did learn something. But another interesting line for me is, because love's never lost when perspective is earned. Lorelai does gain perspective on things from her relationship with him. And this is why she continues to hold affection for him and isn't angry with him, You said you were going to come and get me, but you were 25, and the shelf life of those fantasies has expired. Lost to the Lost Boys chapter of your life, She's talking about Peter like 25 as being young, and yet here we are talking about 17-year-old Christopher like he's supposed to be like some together grown-ass man, right? And so like Taylor's like, oh, you were only 25, yet we shit on Christopher constantly. The shelf life of the fantasies has expired. Oh, that's so good. That's such a good line. Lost Boys chapter of your life. Yeah, that feels like California, That there was a line in one of the earlier songs. It might have even been in Cardigan. Let me see. Yes. Chasing shadows in the grocery line. I knew you'd miss me once the thrill expired. The thrill for Christopher was going to California and being free, being young, chasing success and independence. And now we're here in Peter where it's just like the thrill has expired. He's moved on from that. And he does miss her. And so once again, connecting these songs. So when I heard this song, like immediately, I think the first listen, I was like, holy moly, this is Christopher Hayden.
I mean, I get it, but like, again, and in this song, Taylor puts a number on it and says like, you were 25. Okay. Fantasies expired. I'm not saying that every single person in the course of history or on earth right now needs to have their life figured out by 25. Certainly not, But I think the point that she was trying to make here, and the point that Lorelai was always trying to make to Chris, is just that, in a way, yes, the door was always open for you, but you needed to figure out your own life first and what you wanted that to look like and have your ducks in a row before you could come be a part of our life. Like, I want that for you because it's important that you have that. Like, it's great that you want to be here for us, but you need to take your own well-being and your career path into consideration as well and make sure that you are going to be established separate from us. And so I think that was definitely Lorelai being selfless in her own way, as if to say, I want you here. And I think it's vital that you're a part of Rory's life, but it's also vital that you take care of yourself as well. However, as time went on, I think there was maybe a little bit like a part of Lorelai that was just like, well, now we're in our 30s and like, I still want the best for you, Chris, but what does that look like? Can you tell me why you haven't figured it out? What can I do to try and help you? Because it seems like you're still floundering, and perhaps even I would have expected you to have that figured out by now.
Yeah, that's the whole vibe of the song, is again going back to the Peter Pan illusions of the true inability to go past the age of 8. You know what I mean? Like there are things with Christopher that hold him back, and she recognizes that, and this to me is her holding him to account for that. You said you were going to grow up. You said you were going to come find me. I won't admit that I let the lamp burn. She's not going to let on how much she wants him to get it together. And like I said, we'll get to it in a few songs. But just that whole, it should have been Lorelai of it all. But I'll save that for a few more songs. Anyway, I think that wraps us up. Finally. I love how we thought this was going to be one episode, and here we are at 5 hours of straight recording. We should have done this earlier. Whatever. Anyway, please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you feel the vibe. Drop us a comment with your thoughts and feelings about what we talked about. There's still a conversation to be had.
Yep. Other than that, we'll keep saying it as it gets closer every week. FanFest is coming. If you have not bought a ticket to this event, please consider doing so. It is October 18th through 20th in Guilford, Connecticut this fall. It is the best Gilmore Girls weekend that you could ever envision having. We will be there. Cast and crew from the show will be there. There's a link to that event in the description below where you can seek out more info and buy tickets. But please consider doing that as well because you will not be disappointed.
Absolutely. We love that event. And hopefully we will have an episode with Jenny going over what to expect this year. So stay tuned for that. But in the name of not keeping you here too much longer and not totally running over our allotted recording time in StreamYard, ciao. And we'll see you next Friday for dinner.
Have a good weekend, y'all. Thanks for staying with us.
Bye.